Welcome back to our enlightening conversation with Franco DeNicola and pathwalker Dudi Maroshi. And our next topic of discussion is about the power and permission or authority to create our own reality and manifest.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big issue for me in my last trip to Colombia, and I noticed that it's not only me, it's also in the indigenous and extremely powerful shamans. They have these barriers of what they are allowed to manifest and what are now not allowed. And this is the question about the difference between liberty and freedom, because we are allowed to play around inside the rules of physics, of known physics. That's freedom, right?
Yeah.
But we are not allowed, quote unquote, to go outside those physical rules. Let's say we are not allowed to float, right? And some people do. Okay, and we have no, let's say, authority, or we have no liberty to make our own rules. Let's say, create our own physical physics rules. Okay, so the question is, when and how we are allowed to manifest and develop our own, let's say, supersensory powers. Is that clear? I'm kind of confused.
I think I have a good understanding of what you're saying. So, yeah, that's a really big one, because in essence, there's many aspects to all of that. Because sometimes people say, well, you know, how much power do we have in creating and shaping our reality, right? And I say, well, we have lots of power to shape and, you know, form our reality in a certain way. However, who's asking? You know, is it the ego mind? Is it your higher self? Is it the collective?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how many parts are involved? I mean, like, if you take ourselves, right? What is our what part of us creates? Okay, there's several parts. Okay, we have our conscious mind. Our prominent thoughts over and over again have a form of reality, of shaping our reality. We have our subconscious mind, which basically carries stories, belief systems, and so forth, and also carries rules and limits and so forth, and what's possible and not possible based on experiences, what it's learned, what it's, you know, experienced through other people or the past or anything of nature.
So it is external. So these are external programming from culture, for parents and teacher, and self-doubt.
Right. So the first two are very prominent with programming, really, and from, you know, exposure and experience from others, right?
Right.
The third part of it, then there is there's many parts. I'm not going to cover them all. I'm just going to cover the more bigger parts. The next part is your superconscious mind. Your superconscious mind is your higher self and soul. Okay. So that plays a role in it too. What reality are we creating here that would best serve for the reason that we're here? What is it going to serve in a sense of your growth, expansion, and, you know, able to do more of what you came here to do? How much of it is in agreement to facilitate others and so forth? So it looks at the bigger picture and says, okay, your reality somehow has to fit in, so you're a piece of the puzzle that not only advances you, but advances other people around you. And it could be positive, negative roles. It doesn't have to be just positive roles, right? So you have your superconscious mind. Then you have the collective conscious mind, which is basically what the environment, or what we call environment, that is the cluster of souls that are involved, and not only a cluster of souls, but the clusters of consciousness and entities and so forth.
Yes.
So if the collective says, oh, as a collective, we need this type of experience and we need somebody to participate in this experience, and who's the best skilled for playing this in this particular area and this particular time to be able to step into that role. So then your reality goes, oh, okay, I better take that into consideration and shape the reality that will affect other aspects of myself too. Then you also have, of course, two other parts of it, that your higher self, being the soul, comes with a list of things that it wants to do. Okay, so not only what it wants to do for itself, but also what it's agreed to do on a collective scale. So, and there's also a list of unfinished stuff that they may have carried over from past lives and so forth. So that's the soul aspect. But then you also have an entity. What is an entity? An entity is the memory, the consciousness, the awareness of the body in a human form, which is a cluster of energy that is not the body, but works in line with the body. So sometimes you probably have heard, I don't know if you ever heard it, that the body reincarnates.
Yes.
And you've heard that the soul reincarnates. There's two different parts of you that reincarnate, and they don't reincarnate the same, right? Because your soul's incarnation is basically taking new life forms, new experiences, but it only records various particular focused experiences that it wants to have and the contribution that it wants to have accordingly. And it doesn't take on all the rest of the details. And it doesn't really log in exactly how it feels to be in the body. Okay? Or the identification of a body, or that the body does this or feels this or anything of that nature. It uses that as a receptor, but it doesn't dialogue the details. It just wants the experience. It wants what we are here to do on a reality aspect. The entity, on another sense, is very different. The entity goes, okay, I'm the evolution of the human species. So there's the evolution of the soul, and there's the evolution of the human species. So the entity identifies with the evolution of the human species. So it now focuses more of how it feels to be in a body, how it also learns from that, the educational part of it, like for example, you can have an entity that knows how to play the piano beautifully, you know, learn how to play the piano, really put, put its effort and energy around that. The soul has no concern about the piano. So when it comes in, it's like going, that doesn't matter. But while you're playing the piano, we can use it to serve something. But the entity may come in. So you've heard of prodigies?
Yes.
Yes. So a prodigy or a reincarnation of Eckhart Casey or somebody else, right?
Right.
And you say, well, yeah, he's got the same mentality, he's got the same knowledge and the same skills, or like Tesla reincarnating. Well, that's not the soul incarnating. Tesla's soul would have incarnated, but it wouldn't have played the Tesla role anymore like before. But the entity of Tesla, when it reincarnates, brings those skills in, for example, or what we call the prodigies. You know, all of a sudden there was this pianist that checked out. Mozart, right? Okay, yes. So now when his entity reincarnates, it will have those skills with it, and it will download it quickly into the body, so that this child, in his early teens, is playing like Mozart does. Because, and then they say, oh, that's an incarnation of Mozart. Because in essence, it's his skills that he has brought in because his entity had embodied that physicality. So when a physicality comes about, you have the physicality, which is the operating, it's the vehicle with the computer. The brain's the computer, the body's the vehicle. An entity comes in, brings in the skills from whatever other lives it's had from a human perspective. Then a soul comes in and gives the perspective outside of the human with a little bit of human in it, if it's had human experience. But it also can bring stuff coming in from other planets and different physicalities and so forth. So you see how we're not just like, this is who we are. There's so many components to ourselves. Now, with that understanding, going back to your question around our capacity to manifest or create, first of all, we have to understand we're always manifesting, we're always creating. We cannot Just the fact that we're breathing, existing, we're always creating. It may look like we're not creating because we keep creating the same thing, and it looks like, well, we're not creating anything new. Well, in true, we are, but we're always just replicating it. So in essence, the manifestation now component comes in and starts looking at all of this and says, okay, consciously, this is what we believe on a conscious mind. This is what we know on a subconscious mind. The soul says, this is what we came here to do, and how can we stage this? And the ego, not the ego, the entity is turning around and says, okay, how can we advance the human experience and bring that part in so that whatever we're going to do is advancing the human experience altogether. So when you put all of those parts together, then you start to create in alignment with all of that. Now, the problem is most of the time, those are misaligned. One's going one way, one's going this way, and one's going this way, and so forth. And then the ego mind, which is artificial intelligence, is a program, a software program that is connected to the matrix, deep into the matrix. Because without the matrix, the artificial intelligence, what we call the ego, wouldn't have existed because they're hand in hand. So in essence, the ego mind, or what we call the artificial intelligence, basically now starts looking at and starts examining everybody and says, oh, they have this and they have that, and this means this and this means that. Well, I want to create a beautiful car, and I want to create a beautiful home. I want to create money, and I want to have this and I want to have that. And it starts to come up with all these reasons. Because if I have this, then I can feel good, because that's how it wants you to feel. If I don't have this, I can't feel good, because then I feel unsuccessful. I feel that I failed, or that I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. Those are all artificial intelligence, are all ego-based. Your higher self and all the other components say, okay, wait a minute here. We're not going to go 100% one way or the other. So in essence, we got to make sure that if we're going to create something, it has to be in alignment. So we may have to balance. We may have to say, okay, this is not important, and this is a distraction. This is important. This is more usable. This is not, whatever it is. So when we are focused at the mind level, or the ego mind saying, oh, I want to manifest this, 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 and this, and of course we're not manifesting it, then we feel that we're not good manifestors. Or the fact that, oh, we're not manifesting, or that something of that nature. And the ego mind saying, well, look, I can't manifest anything. We don't get what we want, and anything of that nature. So from an ego perspective, it's like, no, you're not doing a good job. You're not doing, you're not manifesting anything. From the other aspects, it's saying, wait a minute, this is good, because we're challenging not only the ego mind, we're trying to deprogram it to some degree, but at the same time, we're also, our reality around us that we're creating is facilitating us in one way or another. Now, you also have to understand that you have agreements with other souls, for example, and the collective. And when I say collective, the smaller part is the whole planet. The next part is your region, your culture, because you have to understand, whatever you experience and you create as a reality in your life affects your culture, affects your lineage, affects your immediate connections, relationships, and so forth, your friends, colleagues, whatever. It affects a lot of people, but it also affects the energy around you, and also the collective consciousness and everything else. So you have to look at it. There's a lot of components that your actions, your directions, your thoughts, your focus affects. It becomes part of it. So this is why you say you go with the flow, you go with the moment, because in essence, then you're allowing all the parts to kind of bring in their pieces. And
so are we responsible? Sorry.
When you're talking about responsible, who's asking that question is always the question. I think you froze.
Okay, no matter. Let's continue.
Okay,
it's internet.
Yes. Okay, so
internet connection.
Yeah. So are we responsible on a massive scale? We are the creator. Absolutely, we are responsible for our creation. Now, if we're turning around and asking the ego is saying, well, I'm not responsible for the creation because I'm not getting what I want. So it has to be outside of me. Somebody else is creating my reality. It's my family. it's my relatives, it's my work, it's my this, or it's the matrix, or the, you know, they'll focus everything outside and say, well, this is not my reality, because I'm not happy with this reality. I'm not in alignment with this reality. And then, of course, it's going to say, well, I'm not responsible for it because I wouldn't have created something of that nature. But in essence, all the other parts of you are all working together to kind of play whatever role you're here to play. And so that, yes, from a massive scale, you are responsible for your creation, but the responsibility is not solely yours, meaning that you're not creating a reality just for you. You're creating a reality for many others.
I follow. Okay, I understand that. Now it's much better aligned for me, because I sometimes, when I speak to people, I'm afraid for the ramification of the ideas I bring up. And what we spoke about, dangerous and poisonous ideas, right? I'm afraid of bringing those forward, that I will be responsible for their effect, even though I'm authentically very loving and wish to empower. People might interpret my ideas as very scary and dangerous and go on the fear path. And I might be responsible for that.
Yeah, but you know, I want to bring clarification to that, because I know that if you tune into it, you'll understand it. You're never going to be somewhere, you're never going to say anything that in some way, somehow, that group that you're going to be speaking to or with has not agreed to hear it. Doesn't matter if their ego mind reacts or not. The soul to soul is saying, for example, you walk in a room, the whole soul, all the souls in the room are saying, yeah, go ahead and say what you have to say. Now, of course, the presentation may be more in alignment if you follow here, instead of saying, well, you know, this is not right, and blah, 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 whatever it is, or this is the way it is. You know, like I have that situation. Like I go everywhere. Wherever I go, I'm not going to pretend to be somebody else. I don't do well with that. Okay. And what I mean is, I'm not going to say what people want to hear me say. Okay. From their perspective, if they want me, you know, if I go to my family and they want me to, they're religious and they want to do whatever and they want me to be religious, I'm not going to play religious with them. I'm just giving you one example, right? Or if I go to a place and they're talking about something about the markets and I have, you know, I'm not feeling guided to talk about the markets, I'm not going to talk about the markets. I'm not going to be something I'm not, right? So in essence, I will shift it, right? And for example, so somebody's talking about the markets, right? And they're going, well, you know, what do you think of this and this and that? And I go, well, it's very interesting when I look at the market. And I always imagine, okay, how does it get influenced? How does the ups and downs occur? Who's deciding what is making the choice? And who is actually instigating a fear about something, or that this is valuable and that's not valuable? I wonder who comes up with that. And they're going, oh, I never thought of that, you know. And then you could start changing the equation. And it's like, did you ever think of it? Because I've come to my mind that at times, you know, I'm looking at that, is somebody just turns around and says, yeah, you know, let's create an idea that this company is really valuable, and that if we make people believe that this is very valuable, the price is going to go up. And then when the price goes up, we can make money and then sell the shares before people figure it out the other way, right?
Right.
So I'm just giving you an example. And they go, wow, I never thought of it that way. And then they go, is that how it works? I go, this is what I've been observing, you know, and I've been observing it. You're not challenging them. You're getting them to expand and look at it and go, well, I didn't look at it that way. But if you go in and say, nah, it's bullshit, it's all wrong, you know, this is how it works. They manipulate the stocks and they do this and that. Of course, you're going to now shake them up, and their mind is going, wait a minute, that, you know, and then the walls go up, right? Or you're going to create responses and reactions that may be less than favorable in
I follow.
progress. So it's really how you shape it.
So your approach that you is expensive, and explorative with different ideas rather than confrontational. And my personality is quite confrontational because that's the way I brought up.
Mm.
And so this is something that I really need to let's say to experience and play with and gain some skills with it, how to be inducive and expansive with developing ideas, especially with the youth and the young adults,
Right.
which are because I have tendency to be very when I speak my mind, it sounds very decisive. That I know, right? Very authoritative, and it's not. I really ask people who with me challenge my ideas, challenge my thought, and test them, and it's research them. Okay, and if I'm bullshitting, let it go on the open, but be confident that I'm 100% authentic with what I know, and what I know might be bullshit as well.
Right. Right.
So this is about knowledge, but what about experience? Let's say I have I'm very passionate about developing my supersensory powers. Let's say telekinesis. Okay, this might have very let's say strong impact on people around me. If let's say I demonstrate something very simple, let's say I move something with my thoughts, some people might perceive it as very entertaining, and some people might perceive it as very threatening.
Correct.
And people might be killed because of that. So this is also part of the responsibility. Okay, am I responsible for their reaction, for my actions, or the experience I bring up?
No, I mean, you're bringing up whatever you're bringing up, and it's their responsibility or their viewpoint and their reaction, because based on their programs, how they respond. Like you said, you can be with a few people. One will be entertained, the other one will feel scandalized or resisted or feel threatened and so forth by it, right? Now, so in essence, it's not like you have to look at it and say, well, I got to be careful because this person might react or that. But at the same time, in that scenario, the way I've observed it over the years and how I've catered it, I look at it and I say, okay, right now, if I had to levitate right now and float or move this item like you were saying, what point am I making here? Right? Am I just trying to see myself better than them or show them what's possible or anything of that nature? You got to look at what really is going to come into the mix of what the reason you're going there. Now, for example, if I'm going to move this pen with my mind and I'm having a conversation and say, listen, you know, I've observed and I've learned that if I really focus on this pen and I see it move, I envision it moving, and over time I've been able to see it how it can actually move. I've now come to the conclusion that we have that extra power in ourselves or capability, and it's just a matter that it's dormant, and all we have to do is practice it. And the fact that, you know, levitating or something of that nature is not so far out of reach in our mind, it is very doable, right? And so I've been really inquiring and exploring and experimenting, and this is what I've been able to do or something of that nature. Then you're not going to come in threatening, you're not going to come as entertaining so much as it's a trick, or the fact is, oh, this is some you know, scary being that has these powers and it can, you know, mess up my brain or take advantage of me because he's got more skills than I do and something of that nature. And that's why people feel threatened when somebody represents more powerful than somebody else, right? So the way I look at it If I walk in a room, I kind of scan and feel what I can share and not share, but I'm not going to go in and convince anybody. I'm not going to go in and push. But when I share because I feel that by sharing it, it will open somebody's eyes. Whatever they do with it doesn't matter. I don't take responsibility that they're going to feel bad. For example, you know, in a situation where a relationship is come to the point where it needs to change. Okay, so say you or I decide, okay, this relationship comes to an end. Now, our responsibility is, okay, if I go to my spouse or partner and say, you know, we need to break up, or whatever you call it, separate and go our separate ways because, you know, we are grown, whatever it is, you can look at it and say, well, I'm going to be responsible for her sadness, her upset, for he feeling hurt, messing her life,
Absolutely.
and all of that stuff, right? And then you say, okay, what's more important? That I put so much value in that, and then I still stay in the relationship even though I don't feel good about the relationship, or I feel that I'm done? Or do I look at it and say, well, I have to do what I have to do, and it's not selfish because I understand that what I do will bring growth to the other individual, even though it's understood as something horrible. At some point, they'll get over it and figure out or see something better. Like, for example, in my own first marriage, when that happened, I knew I had to change. It had to change. It was very strong. My higher self guided me, and everything else is like, you got to go. And then the human aspect of the ego mind was going, wow, you know, you're going to cause problems with the family. You're going to cause problems with your wife. You're going to cause problems with the kids. You're going to cause problems with all of this stuff, right? But what I felt inside was, no, I have to do this no matter what, because this is what is my role. What I did. And you could turn around and say, well, it was my responsibility that my wife felt bad. My wife went into depression. My kids felt sad, and that they felt abandoned and all that stuff. And then my family judged me and you know, put me in a certain category. However, over time, I noticed that my kids that felt abandoned appreciated. They actually even thanked me. It took a few years, but they thanked me. Thank you for doing that, because then we got empowered. We had to look after not only ourselves, but we were able to see that, yeah, you know something? I didn't have to rely on somebody all the time to tell me exactly how to do it, how to be there, or to be my safeguard. I started to realize that I can do it. My ex-wife, all of a sudden, everything that she was afraid to do and never would do, she started to do. And now today, you know, we've been apart for, I don't know now, 14, 15 years. In essence, is a whole different person because of it. She's developed her own skills. She's, you know, now works, does whatever she needs to do. She's very, you know, in her own mind, creates her own reality rather than wrapping it around everybody else's reality type of thing. My family, well, you know, their judgment went down. They figured it out. Oh, well, okay, actually, one of my family members said, you're the brave one, because like, I'm in not a good relationship myself, but I'm so afraid to leave because of what everybody else thinks. But you didn't listen to anybody. You went in and did. I see you moving forward. I see myself still in my misery. But even then, it gave them that opportunity. So in essence, where does the responsibility come in? Your responsibility, really, duty, is to be yourself. Is to be yourself, follow your inner guidance. That's your responsibility. Everything else is always in alignment, because there's no way you have an interaction with anyone that the two souls have not agreed, even though the ego minds will say otherwise. So the fact that when I tune into my ex-wife's soul, it said, yes, you need to do this because we're stuck. By doing this, it's going to shake up their world. It's going to break down the ego. It's going to give me more of an inside hand on how to navigate. This is necessary. But from her ego perspective, is going, no, how horrible can you be? You know, we've been together for 26 years. You know, we've been in a relationship, and good and bad, or whatever it is. And how could you dare be so selfish and and want to leave and break the family and all that stuff, that was all ego. The higher self is going, no, go ahead, let's do this. This is the only way we're going to get out of our stagnant state.
Mm-hmm.
So back to what I said, our responsibility is not for what other people decide or feel or experience or anything of that nature. It is for us to follow our own inner guidance, to be truly ourselves. Okay. So even sometimes you may play what looks like a negative role, and it may not be your tendency. Like, let me ask you, Duty. I mean, oh, hang on a sec.
Okay.
Wow. I don't know why that happened, but anyways, sorry for the interruption. But in essence, what was I saying?
The message for you, Dudi.
Oh, right, right.
You gave the message about your family,
Yeah.
your separation, and authenticity with the higher self.
Yes. So even if you had to play, and oh yes, I was going to ask you at this point in time. On my goodness, there, this is crazy.
Everything is absolutely synchronized.
Yes, perfect, perfect. Every time I go back to, so I'm going to ask again for the third time. So, Duty, have you ever noticed that you acted in a certain way, which is not your typical self, towards someone, and you really didn't understand at first, like, why did I just say that? Or why did I respond this way? Or something of that nature?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Well,
many times, and I attributed this to me being emotional and not really and don't have a very high, very low tact. And people will say tact, that I'm going out too much forward and don't have enough barriers. Let's say not mannered enough.
Okay. So that may be part of the characteristics, part of the programming and so forth that would have responded. But in essence, the person that you dealt with, that received, was on the receiving end of that type of characteristic of yours that came out, they basically, if they had not agreed, even though you're not conscious of it, agreed to be exposed to that, you would have not played that role with them. You would have played the role with somebody else or something of that nature. So in fact, that's exactly how they had to hear it, see it, experience it, so that it would trigger them, so that they can have another opportunity to look at their programs or look at their reactions and responses. Okay? Because I found that even myself. I'm a very mild person when it comes to conversations or anything of that nature. I'm not very loud. I'm not reactive, and I'm not, judgmental or anything of that nature, because I don't have that in my operating system. However, I've had situations where I responded beyond my operating system. And I go, wow, how did I just say it that way? Because, I present things with tact immensely, but then there's times that the tactness doesn't get in and it becomes less my typical. But it was the only reason it came out that way is that because they needed to hear it from me, presented that way, to kind of shake them up or do something. And now you have to take another part into consideration. For example, if somebody has sensitivity to people that talk forcefully, and they have a sensitivity to that because of their program. Now, if they hear it from somebody that's always that way, they feel impacted, but not as powerful. But if somebody that's usually very mild all of a sudden responds that way, it hits them way harder. And it's like, what just happened to them? They get the message more powerfully. And I was talking about that with somebody the other day, because my brothers know, and I don't yell and scream and do anything of that nature. Okay. But my brother does not listen unless you scream, yell, or anything of that nature. One of them anyways. Because he's that way. And that's the only way he dialogues. Now, I have different tacts of communicating with him. I still could get through with him without getting loud or anything of that nature. However, there was an incident some years ago where he got off the handle and he started to yell and this and that, and there was nothing he was listening to at all, and he needed to listen to for us to go there. And I was working for I was at my own company at the time, and I had staff there, and they were all around, and they're used to him yelling, and they're used to me just being mild. Okay,
Yes.
I get things done. I say what I have to say, but I do it not in offensive ways. I present it very sharply, whatever it is. But that day, my brother was yelling and doing all of this stuff, and all of a sudden, I responded to yelling and saying some colorful words, which I don't use. And he stopped. And he stopped and listened. Now the staff was looking at it going, who is that? Like Franco's doesn't talk that way. So it shook them up, and it was effective. It was needed at that point in time. I did not, in my mind, say, I got to say it this way. It just came out that way. I was shocked at first, but then I also noticed, it's like, yeah, now I got his attention, and we made progress. And then he quieted down, and then we talked very calmly. There was no more yelling. But he was yelling, I was calm, he was yelling more, I still stayed calm, and then when I yelled, he dropped. And then I can go down there too, and now have more of a quiet talk. So that was necessary for that particular instance. And it's the same thing. So if we're going to say or act a certain way with certain individuals, and they're the recipient of that particular part, unless they've agreed and it was going to be highly beneficial in one way or another, it wouldn't have happened. So we have to understand that we can't feel guilty or bad because we said or did something of that nature. The ego mind is going to say that, you know, you got to feel bad because you yelled, or you got to feel bad because of this, or now that your staff just saw the dark side of you. This was interesting because one of the other staff members said, "Oh, I didn't realize you had a dark side to you." And I said, "No, that wasn't a dark side. That was an act that my higher self responded to, because that's the only way to get the attention." Because I said emotionally, I wasn't charged. I just all of a sudden talked really loud and said certain things to get his attention. But I did not feel like, you know, like from inside, from an emotional aspect, because I didn't feel that. I just reacted that way.
Yes.
And we do that too. All of us does. I'm just giving you an example right now.
Yes.
So when it comes back to the question of responsibility, our responsibility is to be who we are and play out the role that we play. Authentic self, yes.
Yes. So let me twist this question in a different direction. Okay. We are taught by many religions and spiritual teaching. There are some things we are not allowed to create. Can you relate to that somehow?
Yes. You know, a lot of the religions and some cultures and so forth apply rules, what's acceptable, not acceptable, what you can create, what you can't create, what you can have or can't have. Because if you go outside of that range, you're not going to be within the community, you're not going to be in the group, you're not going to be in the religious order or something of that nature. I know even growing up, I was always kind of a rebel, if you want to call it that. Not a rebel that was on a fight or anything like that. I questioned things, and I let people question things. And so as far as was concerned, when religion dictated something, let's say a priest or some authoritative group from a group of some sort would say something, I did not take it as a fact, and basically at that point in time questioned where that was coming from. Now, from their perspective, that was taboo. You cannot question it. Not only that, it's some dark force, or what they call the devil at that point in time, that was, you know, manipulating to you because of this, right? So the other thing is, as a true follower of our culture or our thing, is that these things are not allowed. You're not to get into business and become, you know, rich and put your thoughts in materialism or something of that nature, because it's not in the guidelines. It's not the rules that they had applied, right? I'm not saying that that's a thing, because, you know, one's right, one's wrong. It's just more the fact that they would have that. So in essence, if you want to play the game, then you take the responsibility to play within their game and their rules. But if
Right.
you're coming in and you're not saying, well, you know, I don't apply with the rules, but I'm not going to come in and chastise you or punish you or fight you because of your rules. I'm just not going to abide, but I'm going to also share other things that will make you look at it differently. Then, you know, that's your responsibility that you choose to do that and you share it. I felt my responsibility to question things. Believe it or not, that's what I felt. I felt it was my for me, duty. My feeling was, if I stay quiet when I feel guided to say something, I was not following through with my responsibility. My responsibility was either a question or to bring something for them to ponder or to look at. Okay? And I would know when I have to say something. And my mind had sometimes said, no, you better not say that because they're going to judge you or they're going to react or anything of that nature. And my higher self is going, no, we need to say it. And how are we going to say it? We say it, right?
Okay.
So in essence, my thing, it was not to buy, like we were talking about earlier, we're not going to go in and buy into their rules unless you want to participate in the same fashion and say, well, I want to join your community and I'm going to surrender my free will. I'm going to surrender my level of creation to be able to fit in your box. So I'm going to only create what's acceptable in your box. That's a choice you can make, but are you being authentically yourself? That's the other question. Are you? Most likely you're not, right?
Okay. So Franco, let me take it let me move it a higher step. Let's look at the teachings of the Tibetan Buddhism that teaches that in order to release your suffering, you should release your attachments by relieving your wants, your wishes, right? And that means that I should stop wishing to develop my spiritual strengths and spiritual path, right? Because this is my want, this is my passion, right? And my interpretation for that, well, this is dispowering. Is this correct to say in English?
Disempowering.
Dispowering and control, manipulative manner to keep people under control.
Correct. Yes. Now, the surrendering part is, realistically, if you want to understand that part of it, is what is suffering? Suffering is wanting something and not getting something and then feeling something else. So basically, I don't feel good because I want this and I'm not getting this. And because I'm not getting this, I'm going to feel bad. Okay? So really, it's disconnecting or letting go of the meaning attached to it. And that meaning is, if I don't get this, I'll feel bad. If I don't get this, I'll feel I failed. If I don't get this, I cannot be happy or anything of that nature. That's the part you need to let go is, but you still may desire to create something in your reality, and you can do that.
Okay.
But you let go of the attachment that it has to be this way, in this time, and if I don't get it, it means this. That's the part you let go of. So you say, well, I'd like to have this part in my life, but I'm also going to be genuine and I'm going to work towards it without sacrifice, without suffering or anything of that nature. And then I'm going to let all the other alignments to come in place, because when I let that free flow happen, then all the pieces come together. But if I'm in a situation where I'm suffering because I'm not getting something, then I'm locking myself up. My creativity gets smaller and smaller and smaller. My opportunity to create something becomes more and more limited. That's the thing. So it's not like when we talk about letting go of all your possessions gives you freedom. Really, it's not getting rid of your possessions that's the freedom. It's the meaning we've give to the perception,
Yes.
possessions, the attachments we have with our possessions. If I don't have this, it's going to be bad. And if I, if this is not in my life, I can't feel good about this or whatever it is. That's the part that creates suffering. That's the part that actually ties us up. You say, well, I enjoy this particular item or this particular home or something of that nature, and I'd like to have that as part of my experience. But if it's not there tomorrow, I'm not suffering. And if it's not there tomorrow, then my world doesn't end. It's not there, it's not there. Something else will be there, and I'm okay with it, right? So it's like, this is what I'd like to create as my reality. I'm okay while it's there, and if it's not there, it's okay too. It doesn't mean you don't work towards creating it, but you're also at the same time observing and say, well, how much importance am I giving to this? Like, is it really, really necessary? Because look at it this way, Duty. There's many times we relinquish wanting something because we strive so hard to get it. And the moment we let it go, sometime later, we get it. It's like, what happened?
Happened a few times in my life.
There you go.
Yes.
Because it was what was holding us back was the meaning, the importance, the fact that it had to be this way or that way. And it was all the energies that we've given to it because it wasn't there or that we had to have it. It's like, if you let go of that, that's really what you're letting go of. It's not letting go of the possession. Now, if you got a bunch of stuff you're carrying around that you never ever need, yeah, then it's good to lighten your load because you don't want to drag it around from place to place. That's fine, But no, I got to let go of everything. And the exercise is good because some people have a tough time letting go of the attachments unless they let it go, everything. And when they let it go, then they let go of the attachment. Then when they get it again or get something else again, they're not going to find themselves attached to it. So it's an exercise, but that's not the answer. Like, for example, spiritual teaching is, your higher aspect, your consciousness is that's important. Everything else is, and not important or anything of that nature. Well, you're in a human body. You're here to experience yourself in a human body. Everything contributes to one degree or another. So you can't discount any part of it. It's like, no, there's some teachings I've heard where the body is nothing, but your spirituality is everything. Well, my thing to them is, if the body is nothing and spirituality is everything, then why did you take on a body? You took on a body because it played a role. So in essence, yeah, you're not going to go by every whim that your body has because of its programs. You're going to still enjoy that whole experience being in the body, because if it wasn't important to you to be in a body and to have what you're doing with right now, you wouldn't have had it. You wouldn't have brought it in. It's like nobody threw you down here and said, okay, you're stuck in the body and now I got to get out of it. Even spiritual awakening, people say, well, when you get into consciousness, the body means nothing. No. What happens is awareness makes you more appreciative of being in a human body, but also brings in that higher aspect of yourself so that you don't see yourself just as a body. You see yourself more than the body, but you're also enhancing the body and its experience in the body. That's what the difference is.
Okay, thank you. That was a very, very profound answer, and I'm grateful for that. And I wish also to even go further and make it even more extreme. Okay, there's teachings, especially in what's called the mystical teachings. Okay, that you are not allowed to play with magic. And magic is another, let's say, technique or technology of manifesting, because it's made with intent.
Right.
And this could be interpreted as black magic or white magic, but no matter, it's the same technology.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, it's the intent that makes it white or black or white, whatever, like you said, right?
Yeah.
So do you use the technology or don't use the technology? The thing is, what's the technology going to do for you? Is it going to supersede something that you're trying to escape from or something of that nature? Or is it just going to enhance and show, oh, if I use this technology, I could advance my my creative abilities or you know, my manifestation or something of that nature, right? So in essence, you know, realistically, you're just using the technology depending on how you focus on what am I going to do with this technology? I'm going to use this technology so that I can create something that I feel that I might be limited in creating without the technology or something of that nature. It's really the intent and then what it means to do that, to be able to do that. Okay. So in essence, a lot of the so-called technologies may be wrapped up in back-end, so-called not highest order of consciousness technology. So you say, well, I want to use this way to manifest something. But by using that technology, you're also using the original origin and the intent on a collective scale of what that technology represents. So as long as you can negate that part where you don't empower that part of it, then you can use part of the technology or all of the technology, as long as it doesn't bring in all the back end stuff. Like, for example, people use spells or magic of sort to manipulate situations or put somebody into a state or something of that nature, getting what they want. Now,
yes.
Now, again, even when they use that, you can't really over intervene somebody else's capacity to create, because there is still free will. So in essence, even if you're going to play with black magic, for example, and you want to use the black magic to take advantage of a situation, okay, in a way that in your preference, from an ego mind, not from a higher perspective mind, but from an ego mind, yeah, I want to have this in my, I want these wealth, and I want to take it away from this group that I'm judging or something of that nature, whatever you want to do. I'm just using analogies here. So in essence, at that point in time, your intent may not be in completely your truest form of self. And that will accentuate more of the negative intent of when that technology was put together. So now you're accessing it in that way. But even that, when you've done that, and you want to project it towards a group of people because you want to create harm, for example, or disempower this person, you can't really do it unless the recipient or the playmate that's going to play with you is open to it. They may be not conscious of it. So they may end up having a negative, what looks like a negative experience, because and somehow that helps them, even though on a mind level or observation level may look like you're doing something harmful to them, but they need that experience as part of their awakening or something of that nature. So you have to understand, so somebody that's under a spell will have to acknowledge that I'm open for that, for example, and I allow it to be playing out for a period of time so that I can have certain experiences I wouldn't be able to have otherwise. But then at some point it can change, and when the realization comes, it can be dissolved, or somebody else notices it and removes it for you, you know, type of thing.
Right.
Or even attachments of entities and all that other stuff. There's a lot of different things. So the reason a lot of the groups that talk about it, that you don't play with that, or religious orders or mystical orders or spiritual orders, is because most of the people that engage in utilizing it are not in a very empowered state. So they feel that they may not be able to use it in a way that is beneficial from their point of view and their observation. And for them to use this could be not a devastating, but it can be a tool that can be misused and create unnecessary experiences.
As any technology is.
Exactly. So do I allow these people that are trying to figure out the spiritual world to play with technology that can throw them off, or can distract them, or can, you know, bring them deeper into the ego mind's perspective, because of the fact, oh, look, I can use this magic and I can get wealth, and I can get women, men, this, that, all of this other stuff. Yeah, I like this. I want more of this, you know. So it can become a huge distraction. So what happens is then, you know, they say, well, you shouldn't play with this type of thing.
Okay, so if it's kind of protective. protective approach to the disciples of
Yes,
that religion.
yes, yes. And now the other part is sometimes there's the flip side to that is if they start playing with this magic or they start playing with some of these outside the box things of our rules, then they're going to find out that our rules really don't apply, and then we lose power or
Right.
we lose a member. So
Right.
yeah. So this is the thing, because when I was being brought up, and my family was very religious, you cannot question religion. And that's where I was the most rebel, because I questioned everything. So their rule was, you don't question it, you have to accept it. This is how God gave it to us. This is how it's written in the Bible. This is how it's, being taught in church. This is the right way. You cannot question anything. The reason, and they enforce that, the church, the priest, all the higher orders and so forth, their little order thing, reinforce that, because you start questioning, then you're going to see outside the box, and you're going to see the scam, or you're going to see that it's not really real, right? So
you see that
we're going to scare the shit out of you. We're going to tell you that you're going to do some sin. You're going to burn in this fictional place called hell or something of that nature, because that way you won't question it and you stay in the box with us.
Yes. And then when you ask question, you measure, do they really walk the talk? If you don't ask questions, you are on the path that is guided you by blinders.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you for this. So this is kind of a protective. So these restrictions are blinders for the disciples of the spiritual teachings.
Correct.
Okay. Now let me ask you this: is it responsible? Let's say if on my path I want to learn my creative forces. Do I have creative forces at all? So I start playing with magic. And if you don't have a good teacher, you can burn your fingers very quickly. Right?
Yeah.
So you don't play with matches if you don't know what's the rules of engagements.
Yes, and the intent of that particular technology and what is there, because a lot of the technologies may be loaded with other side effects, if you want to call it that, in a sense. So if you don't get caught up with that, you prepare yourself and you direct the technologies in a way. But if you're just using the technology and not really giving, a true connection to it and how it can respond one way or another, then of course, like you said, you can get your hands burned, because you're playing with the matches, right? Without understanding that a match can light up a fire, can produce heat, can, light this, do that. But at the same time, a match, if used in a certain way, can burn down your house, burn yourself, or do whatever, right? So you need to know both sides of the technology, how it works.
But, and for that, you need a teacher. And for that, you need someone who is more powerful. So my question is, how do you, let's say, the unknown powerful magician, and in my trip to Colombia, I was standing for a Japanese shaman. I never felt such power in my whole life. And I told myself two things. Maybe she is the most powerful person I met in my life, and maybe I'm just starting to open, and I'm just sensing, and this is the first time I sense such power. And there are other people that I didn't ever notice because I was not so sensitive. But the point is, I was not afraid, and I was on the point of appreciative.
Right.
I told them, you are one of the most powerful magicians that I ever met in my life. And she giggled. It was through a translator to Japanese. And she giggled, and and I was reflective of how innocent I was. And approaching her.
Right.
So me getting in my spiritual path when I get in presence of those powerful people, I said, if they are so powerful people, that means that I can be as powerful as they are.
Exactly.
Right?
Because
Right?
everybody's got the same capacity of what you call power. It's just that they've focused on it, they've practiced, they mastered it so that they have a better way of utilizing it. That's the thing. But you're no different. Like they don't have any more powers than you do. They are just more skilled at using them in a certain way because they've been practicing. So that's why a lot of the spiritual people go through self-mastery or self-discipline or whatever it is, in a sense where they actually focus and put their focus and attention to utilize a certain understanding, a certain technique, or whatever it is, so that they can better use it. You can do the same thing. You can have the same, what looks like power, because you can master some of the technologies and techniques that they use, because that's what they've been doing. They spent a lot of time. You take like even people with martial arts and so forth. How do they become a powerful martial artist unless they practice and they experiment and they know how to focus the energies and how to connect with things so that they know how to move and how the energy moves with it and how to disarm and whatever, right? So it's the same thing.
Right.
It's the same thing.
So my obstacle is the authority, because during my spiritual teachings, I was taught that in order to get there, to be a shaman, a powerful magician, whatever, you need some dedicated spiritual teacher that will teach you, guide you, and guard you. And you need some authority. And I have great resistance for authority.
So that's a good question, but what does authority mean to you?
Authority, to me, means some protective guidance or construct on one hand, and on one hand is someone who dictates my path. So it's one hand it's protective, and one hand it's and my growth was through resisting and questioning authority always.
Okay.
So
yeah, go ahead.
So in a manner, being in a, I would say, conflictive or combat engagement with authority is my path of growth. And that's what I love so much about my teacher, that I'm not expecting to agree with her.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, the whole thing about authority, we give that idea of authority to people. Like, for example, like you're talking about a spiritual teacher. A spiritual teacher may say to you, okay, for you to learn this, this is the steps you need to take. This is the direction you need to take, based on their experience. This is what I've seen. This is, through experience, this is what you need to do. But it's up to you if you go that route or not. It's not that they know better. They have experience in that area. And if you want to replicate part of that experience, then you may have to take those steps. But that's your choice. There's nobody has authority over you, ever. Somebody just tells you something, and then it's up to you if you make them more authoritative than yourself. Because in essence, it's saying, well, I'm going to disregard what I feel, and I'm going to go with what he tells me or she tells me or something of that nature. Now you put them in authority and you put yourself out of that authority. But in essence, unless you do that, nobody has authority over you. Nobody has to tell you how to dictate your life in any which way, any of that nature. But if you're going to a teacher and the teacher is saying to you, you want to learn martial arts, you want to advance in spirituality, this is how you do it. Now, that is another part of it. And I wanted to share this with you, Duty, is that for a period of time, you may want to take exactly the steps they showed because that's what they're teaching, okay? Because they've done it and they've seen results. However, the key here is never to get locked in to somebody else's teachings or experiences. You learn from yourself too. So in essence, you will adopt and utilize parts of it, but you also bring your part into it. Like, for example, you know, if somebody shares something with me, I learn from people from their viewpoints or whatever it is, because that's that way. But I don't take anything from anybody that says, oh, this is how it's done. I may experiment it with it, for example, to see, oh yeah, there's those results, but does it align with me 100%? Can it be done better? Or can it be done in a way that actually more in alignment with me so that it's actually more powerful for me, for example? And then it's like, you show me the path, but then now I want to go on my own and I want to bring in other parts. I know that this is the direction, but I can bring in other parts and then maybe change the direction anyways altogether. So a true spiritual teacher will never say that I am your authority and you got to do it my way. All they're going to say is that I'm going to show you a way that works for me and has had results. You use it until you feel that you are ready to move on by yourself, bringing in your own other aspects of whatever you want to do to go beyond it.
Thank you, Franco. Thank you, Franco. I really appreciate this answer. It really helps me, and more important, it empowers me. This answer.
You're welcome.
And for me, you asked me what authority. We spoke about people, but for me, authority means this empowerment. Because whenever I obey authority, I give that authority some part of my freedom.
Yeah.
So, and there's teaching for that. There's lesson in that. And it's what I get from your answer, that I may participate in authoritative relationship as long as it is support my empowerment.
Correct. Yep.
And my question is that if I look at the greater picture of our very authoritative society, which is less authoritative than it was, let's say, 100 years ago, especially for women, okay? And I'm very rebellious about the authoritative and strict organization, let's say, government, police, tax authority, army, and so forth and so forth. How can I, because I'm so, let's say, defensive and confrontational about it, how can I transform it to be, instead of confrontational, to be supportive and let's say growth opportunity for me? Because I'm still on this, let's say, disease or dysfunctional, confrontational aspect.
Right. So in that particular situation, the thing you drop is your resistance to whatever that is that you're looking at. For example, this whole thing of authority, okay? So instead of fighting the authority or fighting these sets of rules or this way of doing it or something of that nature, you disregard it. You go, basically, there's no authority here. They're sharing what they're sharing, they're doing whatever they're doing, and so forth, right? So
right.
you put it at that point, and then when you've taken the authority out of it, then you go and share what is outside of that authority, not because you're fighting it, rebelling it, or anything of that nature. You're just expanding whatever you're being shared, right?
Okay.
So in essence, you're empowering yourself. So if somebody says to me, this is how it has to be done, and they're very authoritative and so forth, I realize that's their point of view. My point of view is, yeah, you can feel or think whatever you want, but ultimately it's up to me if I want to do any part of it, and I still will decide on which direction I'm going to be. So in essence, when it comes to the whole idea of, like you said, fighting a system or of some sort where, poor handling or communicating with, say, women or something of that nature, or degrading of something of that nature, and this whole authority stuff
Yes.
comes out. You can see what it is. Authority is not real. It's all manifested. It's just an idea, concept, belief system. It's not any authority. They have no power. However, you now facilitate others to say, hey, listen, it's really, they have no say in the matter. You decide how you want to participate or not. So you help the people that are feeling disempowered to become more empowered and disregard the whole idea of authority. It's like, the thing too is like people say, well, the authorities have the say in your life. And I go, no, if I give them the opportunity to have authority over my life, then they will. But if I don't give them anything at this point in time, I still have the freedom. They can't even see me. You can become invisible to authority if you're not giving them power and you choose to do whatever you want to do. But I can tell you, if you're going to go in with your guns, and you're going, I'm using this figuratively, you're going to go in and say, well, I got to fight the authority. You're going to have this. You're going to have them seeing you and fighting you. But if you go in as this silent and you're not afraid of them because you know that they have no power whatsoever, you will do what you need to do, and you're the one that gets in there and changes everything around, and they don't even know what happened because you're not even in their radar. But the moment you're in fight mode, they see you.
Right. Well, this is a nice anecdote. One of my visions and my let's say, super sensory power that I want to develop is to be able to erase myself and my footprints from all computer systems. And then I will be truly invisible to the systems. I will not be under the regulations and rules of the state and whatever.
Yeah,
because I'll be invisible.
Yeah, the thing is, as long as you don't have fear for them and that they feel that they have power over you or anything of that nature, you become invisible. It's like you do what you need to do, and you don't have to engage with them. You don't have to fight with them. You don't have to be afraid of them, and then you become invisible. Then nobody even notices that you're there, and that's how it works. Because you need to be like, they work at this energy, right? At this frequency. If you're outside of that frequency because you're not playing with fear, fighting, or anything of that nature, then they don't even notice you. I did this experiment years ago with a group. I was teaching a class in the city, and we were in a section of the city where it's a little rough, okay? You don't walk there at night, okay? Because the collective belief is that's a dangerous place because there's always people drunk, people fighting, people hurting themselves, and whatever else. So I took my little small group of students. There were 7 students and myself. So before we entered that street, we did a little process to drop all the fears, just see it just for what it was, not to judge it, not to react it, and just feel like you're just walking through a movie set and no one sees you. We walked. So then we started, after we did that process, we walked through this area, which is a rough neighborhood, like they call it. And there were people fighting, falling in front of you, doing whatever. Nobody noticed us. We walked right by and nobody noticed us. And then at the end, we went back and I said, okay, what did you see? He says, wow, they didn't even know we were there. I said, exactly, because you got out of their range. Their range was to be volatile, to be angry, to be resisting each other and so forth. And you guys were coming in, we did the process to bring you in such a calm, neutral state. You weren't in their radar. They couldn't see you. like they may see a shadow of you, but they couldn't register you. Like, for example, you know, there's weapons that are called heat sink weapons. They feel the
Yes.
heat of the jet so that it can
Yes.
blow it up.
Yes.
Well,
Infrared.
infrared, right?
Yes.
So what's basically, they have infrared, but if you're not producing heat, if they're not picking up something that they can pick up, they may see you coming by, but they can't pay attention to you because their radar's not their infrared's not picking you up because of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's the
Thank you.
perfect analogy, and it's all energetic, of course.
Thank
So
you.
that's what
Thank you.
I said. So the thing is, and I'm going to say something really interesting because some people get a little shocked by it.
Mm-hmm.
The moment you go into protection mode, first you become a victim. Second of all, you get spotted.
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 Right.
You become in their range,
Right.
and then you're going to have somebody that's going to you're going to have what, negative entities and negative energies, people that want to play in that field. You become their target.
I follow. I understand, and I feel your answer, and it relates to your previous when we spoke about negative magic and so forth. My personal response, and after I also experienced some psychic attacks, is that the best my my interpretation was the best defense was one, no fear. Second, no interaction.
Correct.
That was, and some other teacher says you should love them. I said no, because the attack, let's say the defensive attack, would be to love them and to accept them. And my inner knowing and the way that I instinctively responses was no fear and no engagement.
Yep. Because the moment you don't acknowledge it, like it even exists at that point in time, it can't tangle with you. You become invisible. That's what happens.
You don't play, you
Yeah.
don't engage.
Exactly. Without engagement, you're invisible.
And one of, let's say, I also had a teacher, which is not a spiritual teacher, but kind of in self-empowerment teacher, and he said a very profound message. In order to, you need two sides to fight.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Right?
That's right.
It says about relationship. You can't fight if there's no opening.
That's right. And I've proved it many times, even with people that were dealing with conflicting people and so forth, that were being very negative towards one. The moment you don't engage, the moment you don't even acknowledge it, even if it's a child, you'll notice that they just calm right down, and because there's nobody to play with them, and there's nobody to stimulate them, and they basically, it stops. It takes two to basically engage, and without one, and this is the thing. Now you will have, like, for example, in one of my relationships that I had years ago, she was very challenged and very conflictive, but I'm not a conflictive person. So in essence, I would not engage, and in fact I would just leave it alone, and at times that would make her more furious because I wouldn't engage.
Right.
And it's like, oh, but I still didn't engage. And then it would just calm right down, because in essence, no matter what, I wasn't there to engage or support that energy. But if I started to defend myself, like even when somebody says, oh, you're such and this and that and that and that and that, right? And if you turn around and try to defend yourself, or the fact that they misunderstand you and you're trying to straighten out the misunderstanding, you're still engaging, and then it's just going to go back and forth. Now, eventually, depending on how you come about it, you know, like for example, in my case, I would say, well, you can believe whatever you want. At some point, you'll see what really is taking place, and that's it. And you walk away from it, and it's like, oh, I can believe whatever I want, and someday I'll figure it out. And then they'll think, well, maybe I should look at something else, right? And just think about that. But you're not going to go in there and say, well, no, you're absolutely wrong. This is not who I am. I don't do that. I've never done that before, and so forth and that.
Mhm.
You can believe whatever you want, but someday you'll figure it out that that's not the case.
Okay.
And that's
Okay.
it.
Thank you.
And then
Thank you.
it diffuses everything. It's like, oh, okay. And then they don't know what to do with it because you're not
Okay.
engaging.
Okay. Thank
Like,
you. That
for
was
example, sometimes I get
yes.
comments, negative comments on my postings. You know, I post something and I may have a negative comment. And some people say,
Mhm.
well, aren't you going to respond? No. Why? Leave it alone. They can believe whatever they want. They
Same
don't
with
need to
me.
find themselves.
Same with me.
Why engage? Why even bother?
Same with me. Um, let's wrap this discussion about the allowance and authority, self-authority to create with boundaries. What are the boundaries that we are allowed to create with? And my sense was we are allowed to create whatever we want unless we infringe in other people's free will. And what your aspect of that?
Yeah, well, that's kind of loaded there because in essence, you're allowed to create anything that you so desire. The infringement, if there is actually any form of infringement, it has to be co-created infringement. You cannot infringe on anybody. You can play a role that may look like it's infringing on somebody, but if they don't want to participate in your infringement, you can't. Okay, that's the first part. The other part is you can create all you want, but how much of it is truly what you want and what is for your highest good, and how much of it is just the ego's tantrum trick trying to duplicate or copy somebody else's experience or wanting something that is just going to be another distraction.
Mm-hmm.
So that still comes in. So in essence, yeah, I want this, 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 and this. Your higher self and other parts of you are going to say, well, is this taking in consideration all the other things that why we're really here to do? Or is this
Mm-hmm.
going to be more distractions? Because if it's going to be more distractions, then we're not going to participate, and we're not going to, we're not going to give you the energies to be able to manifest it clearly. You may be able to manifest it, but it won't stay intact, or it's going to give you a negative backlash of some
Mm-hmm.
sort, so that you can actually adjust your creation accordingly, right?
Okay.
So that's the thing. So the general rule, what they say, basically, you can't, as long as it doesn't infringe somebody, is not really that accurate, because first of all, infringement will require participation or participation, but participation will have to be the other person. You cannot force or do something to someone unless they agree to participate. They may not be conscious of it. Like, for
Mm-hmm.
example, if they're going to go bomb a country,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the Americans or whoever else wants to go and do terrorism or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yes.
ones that are going to be affected, the ones that are going to be around when it's doing it, they're there only because they agree to have that experience. Because if they don't, they're going to leave, they're not going to be there, or they're not going to affect that area, you know.
Okay.
Because if it's not in their agreement, you've seen it before, you know, say a plane has to crash or some incident has to occur, and then you feel from your higher self saying, no, we don't take that route today because it's not what is for our highest good. And you say, well, no, I want to go to the park and I want to go do this. And then it says, no, don't take that route because that's not the day for you to go to the park. That's your higher aspect saying, okay, well, whatever's going to engage there is not in your highest good.
Okay.
So
Okay. I follow.
with that understanding, then you can't really infringe.
Okay. Thank you. I feel we have somewhat wrapped this topic of manifestation. I think it's a good time now to make a pause, like a coding pause, uh, a bathroom break and drinking break, and look at the time. We are almost 3 hours more than 3 hours together, and if we can go to the next topic right now, or we just start for another time
Yeah.
for the
Okay.
next discussion.
Okay. So I was just going to say something that I wanted to wrap up. Okay. So most of this discussion that we're having, so that you understand, and I'm sure you understand,
Mm-hmm.
I cover topics that can be questionable, and I say things that can be questionable with somebody that's still emotionally charged or still run on programs. Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yes, of course.
so in essence, I'm not going to make it politically correct. I'm going to give you what is. And then
Yeah.
whoever reacts and how they react, how they understand and so forth, maybe their reaction for the time being, but at some point it become clearer for them. Maybe it's sometime down the road, maybe never. It doesn't matter. But I'm not going to, one of the things that my guide had said to me one time,
Mm-hmm.
years and years ago, he said, "You're not here to tell people what they want. You're giving them what they
Absolutely.
need."
Absolutely.
Because even if it shakes their world, that's what they need, or else
Okay.
it won't be there. That's it.
And I'm grateful, and I appreciate your authenticity and correctness, and that's why I approach you. And I think these discussions are advanced spiritual topics. They are not, let's say, 1 hour's fluffy day of the time interview. These
Yeah,
are deep spiritual matters,
exactly.
and they're not to be watched by at the introductory level.
Right. Yeah, because it will, the ego mind will react big
Mm.
time and try to shut down everything or disqualify it.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, Duty, and I'm not going to elaborate further. Um, when I started saying more of this stuff, and now we're going deeper, like our conversation even from last year to now has already gotten deeper. It's going to
Yeah.
continue getting deeper. But years
Yes.
ago, when I started talking, it wasn't as deep, but it was because the fact that people weren't ready for it. So not that I couldn't go deep, because I knew all this stuff from a long time ago too. It's not like I'm just realizing it now and I'm sharing it now. I just
Yes.
feel more free to be able to share it. But
Thank you.
there was times when I was sharing things and I got people scandalized in a way, because it was like, "Oh, you're denouncing religion and God and this and that," and I wasn't saying anything about it. I was just talking like we're talking, right? There's no bashing,
Right.
no
Right. Right.
judgment. It was just an
Right.
open viewpoint. It's like, how dare you? Can you go and say that? When there's the Bible and there's these rules and there's all this stuff. How could you say that, right? But that was because they were so invested in that belief that any challenging of that belief made them feel that they may be wrong, or that somehow, or something of that nature. But I didn't give power to that, because in essence, then I would have already changed my message a long time ago to make
Right.
sure, right? And that's not what we're here to do. So even yourself, I mean, you're going to share what you have to share because you have to share it, not because that's what people are prepared to only to accept. Yeah, there's going to be a way that you present it, because you're not going to go in kindergarten and give them the facts of of creation to the same degree. You're gonna put it in a story. You're gonna shape it in a certain way so that they can digest it. They can absorb it.
Yes.
So, anyways, we'll let it cut at that, and we'll discuss if we go further today or another time. Okay.